Tell you what, I'm going to treat them all like humans, just like this guy who's joining us right now. That is Nick Wagoner of ESPN, a human being, damn it, who, by the way, speaking of being down on acquisitions, Nick, it felt very much like you were thinking Baker Mayfield to the 49ers was not a good idea. Is that fair? What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's a bad idea. I just think that I wanted to put out the information so that people understand that Baker Mayfield hasn't played well in quite a while, and the numbers are what the numbers are. So people are allowed to draw whatever conclusions they want. But I think the thing you have to look at here is it needs to be understood right off the bat that if Baker Mayfield were to come to San Francisco, he would be the backup. This is going to be Brock Purdy's opportunity here. So the question then becomes, is it worth having Baker Mayfield around as the backup? And there's argument to be made for that. I'm not going to sit here and act like there's not. I also think that if you look at what Baker Mayfield has done, he's played in a similar Shanahan-adjacent offense in Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski, so there's some knowledge there. But it's also a whole different thing to come and learn terminology and verbiage and all those types of things. And Josh Johnson does at least have a little bit of an advantage that way. And we know that Josh Johnson can already fit in with this team because he's done it before. So I don't necessarily know that I was against the move or for the move. I don't really have an opinion on that one way or the other. I just think that I'm not sure Baker Mayfield at this point, and given that this late in the season, would be able to come in and make a difference for the 49ers if they needed him to.
What about the character side of it? Because it seemed like in Cleveland he didn't exactly ingratiate himself in the locker room, and Carolina worked out the way that situation worked out. Is the Niners clubhouse or the locker room culture strong enough to have Baker come in and be absorbed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very strong. The question is, how would he fit in there and how do guys feel about him? I mean, we know that Nick Bosa doesn't care for him, but I can't sit here and say I know how other people feel. You know, Christian McCaffrey is a guy who played with him, so he would have a much better idea of kind of where Baker Mayfield is and how he would fit into a locker room. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they asked Christian those questions and seeing how he thought he might fit in, although Christian hasn't been in San Francisco long himself. So, it's hard to sit here and say because I don't know Baker Mayfield, and you know, you read stories and hear stories, but I do think the 49ers have a very strong locker room and they could take on a lot of personalities, and I'm sure there's guys who maybe even worse than Baker that they could take on or whatever. And again, I don't want to pass personality judgment on the guy because I don't know him at all. But I do think the 49ers could take him on if they wanted to. But also going to what Kyle Shanahan yesterday said, it certainly didn't sound like someone who was super eager to add Baker Mayfield or even put in a claim on him. I don't know that they're not doing that, but he didn't sound like someone who was ready to make that move either.
Nick Wagoner, ESPN, covering the 49ers with us here, Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Okay, Nick, I understand this 49er organization loves Jimmy Garoppolo and respects him for everything that he's been through, and certainly injuries hit differently in a locker room. There's a lot of emotion there. But somewhere down the list of their reactions, is there a tiny bit of relief that they're now not going to get stuck in a really bad financial conversation at the end of the year if Jimmy had played and gotten all the way to late January or February?
Are you asking me if there's a bit of relief that they're not going to the Super Bowl?
No. But I guess the relief is, let's say that Jimmy again goes on a deep playoff run, and then there's all this pressure to bring him back when we know that was not the plan, and they have not financially made room for that. It was going to lead to a difficult spot for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would, but I would say this. We call it the difficult spot, but I think it's one that they would have gladly embraced if it came with a deep playoff run. You know, I heard the conversation many times, like, what happens if Jimmy Garoppolo wins the Super Bowl? How are the 49ers going to pay him? Don't you think that's a problem that they would have openly embraced more than happily? That's the whole goal in this, is to win the Super Bowl. So I don't know that there's relief there. It's really interesting dynamic, Mark, because if you look at this, you could make the argument that Jimmy Garoppolo is more likely to come back to the 49ers now because of this injury. You could say that. You know, his price tag has probably dropped because, again, he's going to be in a situation where he's rehabbing, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. But is he going to miss off-season program? Because that was one of the things that held people back from pursuing him this past offseason, that he wasn't going to be there in the spring and start learning the playbook and those types of things. The other side of that coin, though, guys, is you could make the argument the 49ers at this point might just say, okay, we just can't keep going down this road because this is 3 times in 5 years that we've tied at least some of our season to this guy, and we cannot count on him to stay healthy. So those are going to be the things that they have to discuss, and I don't know that it makes it any easier. It does from the financial standpoint, to your point, Mark, but overall, I think it makes it maybe even a little bit more confusing because they're going to have to figure out, do they still want to bring Jimmy back? And if they don't, who are the alternatives? If they do, what is the cost of that? And what other steps do they have to take to make sure that they're okay at quarterback next year?
Lost in all this is Trey Lance and his stifled development, his inability to showcase what he can and can't do. Have you gotten any sense that the organization has any clarity in terms of where they see Trey Lance going into next year?
I would say this. I would just say that I would be very surprised if the 49ers don't make a significant addition at quarterback in the offseason, whether that's retaining Jimmy Garoppolo or pursuing another veteran of some sort. And a lot of that stems from kind of the same conversation that we're having about Jimmy Garoppolo, where it is a function largely of can they stay healthy. In Trey's case, to your point, is we don't know what kind of player he is when healthy, so that's a double layer to it. But the injury factor is a huge part of this, and the 49ers, again, they have a roster that they believe is Super Bowl caliber and Super Bowl ready. So who are they going to tie that wagon to at quarterback? So I think in terms of Trey Lance, there are a lot of unanswered questions, maybe definitely more so than really any other quarterback in the league, you could argue. But they know what they have with the rest of the roster, and so they're not going to just go in next season blindly hoping that Trey Lance is going to be able to carry the freight for them. I don't believe that's going to happen. Now, Brock Purdy could maybe surprise us. Maybe something crazy happens with Brock Purdy, and that gives them a little bit of stability. But I think a lot of people would be surprised if he played that well, that it just, kind of solidified things here over the next 5 weeks.
Okay, that's interesting right there. Let's hear more about that, Nick. Take us through the Brock Purdy experience from beginning till now. What does the organization actually think about him? What did they think about him in training camp? And what do they think he can handle now?
Yeah, the two things that jump out, number one, that Kyle Shanahan mentions nearly every time he brings up Brock Purdy is the experience, the amount of games and snaps that he took in college. He was a 4-year starter at Iowa State, so you could say there's very little that he hasn't seen. Now, that's just in terms of scheme. That doesn't mean that when you put those scheme with the NFL players on it that he's ready for it. That's a whole different level, but he at least knows what he's looking at, understands checks and cans and hot reads and all those kinds of things that come with playing quarterback in the league. So they feel like he is going to be able to adapt on that side of things very quickly. The other thing that keeps coming up with him when you talk to people either in the building or out of the building about him is his guts, just how tough he is. He's fearless out there. He's not afraid to put the ball in tight windows. We saw that the other day a few times, scarily so, but squeezed a couple into Deebo Samuel and kept drives moving and things like that. So those are the things that I think they like about him, and dating back to when they brought him in were the things that jumped out about him. In terms of the drawbacks and the downside, he's obviously not the biggest guy. He's a good but not great athlete, probably more in the Nick Mullins kind of realm in that term, and then also just doesn't have great arm talent. He's not going to be someone who wows you with his ability to throw a fastball into a tight window or throw a 60-yard bomb or anything like that. So those are going to be kind of the drawbacks, the limitations there, and compared to some of what they think his strengths are and where they think he can lead them.
Nick, great stuff, man. Great to have you here on a big week. Thanks so much for doing it.
You got it, guys. Take care.
Okay, that's Nick Wagoner on